Hello everybody, I think we are busy streaming. Just wanted to bring you a brief one tonight, just a little bit of a chat of things that are in the news, and to say that I will be looking at the chart for France and Emmanuel Macron ahead of the French election. I was going to give elections a bit of a miss because they are fixes in law, but I think this is actually getting a little bit more interesting. And we should have a look at it. And I just wanted to do a little chat as well about what the Ukraine thing is really about. And I don't want to go into the whole history from 2014, the Donbass and whatever, because I think that's been adequately covered. I will be just mentioning something else. Sorry for all of you guys who have asked me to do charts on various things. Felt a little bit drained mentally the last sort of 10 days. And so I haven't really felt able to get my head around some of the more traditional astrology stuff rather than the political stuff, although I did do a reading for Pakistan, which I think was very interesting in light of what actually happened. So this is how the votes went. Now, in the first round of the French election, everyone, well, loads of people will participate, and it whittles it down to the top two, and they will fight it off on the 24th of April. Just interesting to note, Emmanuel Macron was in the lead with 28.4. Marine Le Pen did really well, 23.4. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is the sort of communist socialist candidate, he got 21% of the vote, a very large share, and I'll come back to him because it's very interesting. Eric Zemmour, he's kind of further right than Marine Le Pen, as is Valérie Pécresse. Hope that I've said that right. Yannick Jadot, who got 4.5%, is a Green. We've also got Jean Lassalle. I believe he was also on the right, or the conservative side, and Fabien Roussel is a communist. So I do believe that most of Jean-Luc Mélenchon's voters who voted today may not bother to vote at all when it comes to the runoff election. So we could take that 21% and think, well, that's not necessarily going to Macron. In fact, many of his voters are so fed up with the whole thing that they would rather put their vote towards Marine Le Pen, which could bolster her. I think it's a dead cert that the votes of Zemmour and Pécresse at 4.7% and 7% are going to Marine Le Pen, as they are on the right. This 4.5 will probably go to Emmanuel Macron, and maybe the 2.5 of Fabienne Roussel. Jean Lassalle's 3.5 will also go to Marine, which tips her over the edge. So while she didn't come out ahead, because people are so fed up with Macron, and because Marine Le Pen has moved a lot of her policies to the left, her economic policies have become more to the left, which they always were a bit, and her social policies have gone more to the right, which means she's going to pick up a lot of Mélenchon's voters. So it could be a win for Le Pen, but I do want to look more carefully at it because I was over-optimistic about her chances astrologically last time. So what's going on in Ukraine? Okay, what is Ukraine doing to us in the West? People are seeing sky-high petrol prices. It's impacting their ability to move around, to use their cars to travel, maybe putting some people in a mindset to get an electric car. So it's changing habits. It's stopping people using their cars, stopping a certain amount of commuting, interrupting small business again, and maybe forcing people to electric cars. That's everything that they've wanted us to do in terms of the green communist agenda, and yet now they don't have to kind of force us. They've got this wonderful situation of Ukraine creating price hikes in fuel and oil and gas shortages and food shortages that will make us change our habits. In terms of food shortages, people might have to eat a lot less meat because of being economically strapped, right? Less disposable income. They might also eat less sort of processed food. So it's going to force people, and because of possible shortages of sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, or canola, wheat and grain, it may force people off those foods. What did they want us to do? Start eating bugs? I can actually foresee this as something that would happen. I mean, it's not easy to make people move away from meat, but this is almost forcing people. And what if the cattle and the farm and the livestock don't have enough food to eat? And I believe chicken feed is very, very expensive as well. And there's been outbreaks of bird flu, courtesy of the PCR test, of course, which they're using to test for bird flu. So you can imagine the results are going to be exactly what they want. So just think of how, because of Ukraine, it's forcing us to all change our lifestyle. No disposable income means less overseas travel. It's exactly what they want. So they want less freedom, which means we're all more stuck in our home because we're concentrating on saving money. We're more stressed. More people may have to may lose their homes, so you will own nothing, and you will be happy. So everything that's happening in Ukraine is suiting the agenda perfectly, right? So I hope my audio is coming out. I really do. Next thing. Is Putin in on it? Well, I actually don't think so, because if you cast your mind back, there was a time when Saddam Hussein was in with the West. They were supplying Saddam in Iraq with weapons to fight Iran. In fact, my earliest memory was hearing about Iran and Iraq war on the news every night, right? So, and remember at one stage when Blair was visiting Gaddafi, and Gaddafi was flavor of the month? So, and then we know what happened to Saddam. They turned totally against him. They turned totally against Gaddafi. So if Putin is playing along in any way, he's the fool, because they will turn on him and get rid of him when he's finished his usefulness. So it's never good to play the bad guy on the globalists' behalf. And so Putin's a fool if he's doing it, unless he knows that he can pull this out the bag by allying with China. George Galloway was mentioning that something could be brewing in the Solomon Islands, so I think we should be watching that. Next thing with Ukraine I'd like to say is I'm totally aware of Stefan Bandera, the history with the Nazis in Ukraine and everything like that. I know what's been going on Azov and all that. But I do want to say that this whole thing about Nazism and neo-Nazis or real Nazis, smokescreen. What's going on has got nothing to do with Nazis. These people in the Azov and right sector, blah, 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 are what Henry Kissinger referred to as stupid, dumb animals to be used as pawns in globalist policy. You know, these are the people who would be football hooligans in the 80s in Holland and England, right? They're people who are looking for a fight. It's an impoverished country. A lot of young men are frustrated. They're looking for, like, gangs in Mexico. You know, it's like that gang in Mexico Trump used to moan about. I've forgotten their name. It's almost like being part of a gang. I don't think these people are aware of what a Nazi is. They use the symbolism because it's cool. But it's got nothing to do with Nazis. It's Bolshevism, what's going on. It's using Ukraine in exactly the same way that they used the Bolshevik Revolution. It's being run out of Manhattan. It's been run out of New York and London. Exactly how the Bolshevik Revolution was run. It had nothing to do with the grassroots uprising in Russia. The Red Cross in the Bolshevik Revolution was sent out to Russia. I think there were 26 bankers in the Red Cross mission and 4 medics. Right? That was not about Red Cross. It wasn't about charity. It was about the bankers doing an operation. So we already had a Bolshevik revolution in Ukraine when Victoria Nuland installed the government in 2014 after the fake putsch, which was run out of London, and London using the BBC Media Action, which is a kind of branch of the BBC that they use to feed in certain programming, you know, harmless on the surface looking programming to countries like Kazakhstan, Syria, Ukraine, maybe Serbia, with all sorts of messaging that they want to drum into the public to soften everyone up for what's going to come. You know, then you've got the glorification or the Hollywoodization of Zelensky, which is a whole kind of marketing advertising campaign really run by the ad agencies in London. So this is a whole thing. So they arranged it first to install this puppet regime through which can be a vehicle or a vassal state for American banking interests, not just American. In fact, it's not really American at all. It's globalist banking interests. And now they're going to use Ukraine as a lever to bring down Russia and bring Russia totally under their sway because they're not totally satisfied with what's going on there. So what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, it's Bolshevism, it's got nothing to do with neo-Nazis. This is just a big red herring. I'd like to talk briefly about Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor. Something else. Just talking again about Boris and Biden. Boris is supposed to be for Brexit, right? But he thoroughly backs Biden in the election, and Biden will not give us a trade deal. He's not that much interested in giving the UK a trade deal, and he's been interfering in UK policy on Northern Ireland. So why, if Boris was really keen on Brexit, would he have backed Biden so comprehensively? Question for you guys to think. On this thing with gender, you know, David Icke talks about how they don't want 2 genders, they really want 1 gender, and the whole LGBTQ rainbow thing and the transgender agenda is just about creating 1 sex. Well, that's just for the slave class, which is us. It's not for the elites. It's not going to change them. What they want for the slave class is everyone to be uniform. They don't want people having babies and getting pregnant and falling in love. This is all a distraction for the slaves. They want the slaves just to be robotic and therefore being totally asexual, not getting pregnant, not fancying people and dating, it suits them perfectly. So that's why they want no sex, is because it suits the slave class, who must be a robotic, mindless, emotionless class, and having no sexuality plays into that. On a lighter note, about 20 years ago, there was a very funny ad. I found it funny anyway, advert in the UK, and it was about someone who hires this robot, and the robot's like, it's all mechanical and plastic and wiring and everything, but it's got arms and legs and the head's a little bit of a computer. And they hire this robot to do their housework, and it's a Japanese woman, because it's kind of set in Japan. And then one day the Japanese woman comes home and she can't find the robot. It's nowhere to be seen. And then she goes in the bedroom and there's this like mound with a duvet, and she finds the robot in bed with a microwave. And it's like shock horror. And she goes, "Oh, robot cha, ha ha ha." You know, I don't know what she was saying, but that's what it sounded like. Quite funny in a way. But you see, robots can't have these flings. They have to focus on work. You're not going to find a robot in bed with a microwave. And that's kind of why they want to get rid of sexuality. Yeah. Rishi Sunak, Chancellor of the Exchequer, is persona non grata in the UK among many circles because of certain revelations that have come out. His wife is the daughter of the second richest man in India. He owns a info technology kind of firm called Infosys, and she has what is called non-dom status. So although she's been living in the UK with Rishi, her husband, for a very long time, and for all intents and purposes this is her home, if you stay a non-dom, it means you don't pay tax on inheritance tax if your father lives out the country, as hers does in India, and you don't pay tax on your overseas earnings. So she's saving an awful lot. But the whole non-dom thing, it's quite nebulous in a way, because most people who use a non-dom thing are doing it as a tax dodge. You know, although it's totally legal, it's just a bit iffy because the definitions are so ill-defined. You know, you can just push it in any way you want, and it is kind of about tax avoidance, which doesn't look good for a chancellor who's being particularly mean and who isn't really giving a lot of help to British people when they most need it, when he is so incredibly well off. He's richer than Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was previously the richest member of Parliament. You know, his father-in-law's massively wealthy, so he's doing just fine, you know. So it doesn't look good. Plus, you know, we have all these restrictions on Roman Abramovich, and they're seizing assets of Russian people and their yachts left, right and centre, and Abramovich can't even access his funds because they're frozen to pay his staff, which is not fair on the staff. And yet Sunak's wife's father's kind of doing business with Moscow, right? And that's going on. It also seems incredibly hypocritical. May be totally legal. All of this may be legal, but it's tone deaf, it's insensitive, it's dreadful marketing and PR for an aspiring politician, especially one who wants to show that he's almost a man of the people. It just looks rotten. Then we've got the fact that his wife, being fabulously wealthy as she is, was taking masses of furlough cash for a failing company. Also looks bad. If I was rich, I wouldn't be taking furlough cash. I'd take that on the nose simply because I could afford to absorb those costs. It just feels like they're exploiting this situation. And as I say, there's nothing illegal going on here. It just feels incredibly insensitive, inappropriate, and it just feels greedy and grab and take, me, I want more for me. It's just awful. In relation to Rishi, this came out of an article in The Guardian, which I'll link to, and it says that he may still be holding a stake in Theleme, his hedge fund, which, remember Aleister Crowley's religion, Thelema, and he calls his hedge fund Theleme, which was heavily invested in Moderna. But anyway, it's a Cayman's Island-based hedge fund that he co-founded, but he won't say, so the public has no idea. So there's this kind of lack of transparency. Why won't he say? Then it says his wife's investments, where are they? How much does she really own? And he hasn't declared all his wife's shareholdings on his register of ministerial interests. Odd.